volume a bit loud there. Let's try again. Ooh dear. How you all doing? What's happening? Yeah, that's the problem. What is happening with you guys? Before analysing the relationship of evil to salvation, it is necessary to begin with some definitions. The original 1828 edition of Noah Webster's dictionary gives us a summary statement. Quote, evil is natural or moral. Natural evil is anything which produces pain, distress, loss or calamity, or which in any way disturbs the peace, impairs the happiness, or destroys the perfection of natural beings. Moral evil is any deviation of a moral agent from the rules of conduct prescribed to him by God or by legitimate human authority, or it is any violation of the plain principles of justice and rectitude. There are also evils civil, which affect injuriously. Affect. There are also evil civil, which affect injuriously the peace or prosperity of a city or state, and political evils, which injure a nation in its public capacity. All wickedness, all crimes, all violations of law and right are moral evils. Diseases are natural evils, but they often proceed from moral evils. 2. Misfortune, mischief, injury. There shall no evil befall thee. Psalm 91. There shall be no evil befall thee. Psalm 91. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself. Proverbs 22. 3. Depravity, corruption of heart or disposition to commit wickedness, malignity. The heart of the sons of men is full of evil. Ecclesiastes 9. 4. Malady, as the king's evil or scrofula. Malady, scrofula. Malady as the king's evil or scrofula. A Christian must hold that all evil is a product of the fall, of the breach between God and man, whereby the purpose and function of creation has been affected and diseased. The English word evil comes from the Anglo-Saxon. Hello, this is Nathan. Thanks for joining me in the booth. I really hope you're enjoying the live streams and videos. To find out more about this narration project, or to make a donation, go to nathanteacher.com. Thanks. Hang on a second. Was that the end of the quote? It's hard to tell. Looks like it. Huh? Oh. Huh? What? Where are we? Does anybody know where? Okay, I think we need to split this up here. End quote. A Christian must hold that all evil is a product of the fall, of the breach between God and man, whereby the purpose and function of creation has been affected and diseased. The English word evil comes from the Anglo-Saxon and Gothic. It may be related to the word over, and its basic idea is transgressing. In the Dictionary of Philosophy, Febelman defines evil thus, quote, negation of the extrinsic elections of things, in practice the positive effects of such negation, the morally bad, hostility to the welfare of anything, absence of the good, opposite of goodness. End quote. This definition simply covers a variety of philosophical possibilities that evil can be seen as mere negation, a lack or an act of hostility. It cannot be all of these. This definition thus highlights the inability of modern man to define and recognize evil. According to the mythology of modern man, primitive man, being ignorant, projected a perversity onto the natural order and personified natural order and personified it as evil spirits and the devil. According to the Unitarian John H. Dietrich, quote, ignorance gave birth to fear, and fear wed to superstition gave birth to the devil, or rather to devils, for at this early period it was not one devil or bad god, but 1,000, for everything that seemed to possess independent power was personified. For everything that seemed to possess independent power was personified and believed to be a god. And if this power was destructive, then it was an evil god or devil. End quote. Thus, the ideas of evil and the devil were products of ignorance and impotence. Salvation came to mean deliverance from evil, the devil, and hell. Quote, and so the devil, as Mr. Ingersoll suggested, has been the mainspring of theology, and hell the cornerstone of the universe. Take these two things out of Christianity and it becomes an entirely different religion. End quote. This is true enough, but we will return to the matter later and on different grounds than Dietrich does. How then are we to explain the existence of evil? A word in regard to this is necessary to round out my discussion. Evil, of course, is simply those natural processes and social activities and individual behaviour which are horrible, unpleasant, and undesirable to man. This does not mean that there is any such thing as evil in the universe. It only means that there are certain things which, from the standpoint of man's welfare, we call evil. So, modern knowledge denies not only the existence of a devil, but any necessity for him. It denies the real existence of evil. That is, it denies that evil is a real entity, a substance, either in the world about us or... there's something there. I think I missed another quotation mark. Okay, here it is. Okay, just need to insert a quote here. Quote. That'll do. I won't just do. I mean, it's all right. Am I blind? Well, I contend that I'm less blind than I was. I'm exercising my eyes. I'm actively relaxing my eyes. Let's get... Okay, that looks about right. A substance. A substance. Okay, gotta assume the kneeling position here. Excuse me. Shabalabalaba. A substance. Either in the world about us or as sin in man. To put the whole thing in one word, what we call evil is nothing more nor less than maladjustment, and in the same left. And in the time left, I can only suggest what I mean by that. I have treated this subject of evil before, so I need not go into detail. At the outset of this explanation, notice the meaning of life. Life means simply this: a human organism, man or woman, in the midst of, surrounded by, and related to the real facts of the universe. When he is rightly related or properly adjusted to these facts, then the man finds security, health, happiness. When wrongly related or maladjusted, he finds calamity, sickness, disturbance. This one principle explains evil, both physical and moral." End quote. None of these ideas were original with Dietrich. His value is a faithful echo chamber to the thoughts of the Kabul. Lacks energy, doesn't it? And coherence. His value is as a faithful echo chamber to the thought of his day, which stressed evil as maladjustment and salvation as adjustment. A generation was reared to believe that adjustment was the answer to man's ills and problems. Educators talked of the well-adjusted child as the goal of education, and psychologists worked to produce a well-adjusted personality. The result has been a group-directed person. More recently, the word, also used by Dietrich, quote, relate, end quote, is more popular. People are asked, quote, to relate, end quote, to certain things or movements or the times. Dietrich saw evil receding as knowledge and adjustment increased. Quote, all physical evil is maladjustment between man and his conditions. Increasing knowledge is slowly disarming these evils. In other words, we enjoy security and happiness in proportion to our knowledge of natural law and our adjustment to it. The same is true in regards to what we call moral evil. The unfolding history of humanity reveals nothing more plainly than that there are great and universal conditions on which alone man can attain social welfare and happiness, and these conditions can be understood and formulated into laws of justice and equity and fair dealing, which we speak of as moral laws. Within these conditions or laws is what we call goodness, because it contributes to man's welfare. Breaking these laws we call evil because it results in man's injury and destruction. And so, without going into detail, I lay down the principle that moral evil is only moral or social maladjustment, a man's getting out of right relationship with his fellow men or with himself. Our knowledge of the best modes of behaviour for the good of mankind is as yet very meagre, but man's interest has recently been enlisted. But man's interest has recently been enlisted in this direction, and I believe that we shall rapidly gain light through the new sciences of psychology and sociology, and all those social sciences which devote themselves to a study of human nature and human relationships. Knowledge, then, is the devil killer and the exterminator of evil. The devil, then, is not the author of evil. It is only human maladjustment to physical and social conditions in which man is compelled to live. The devil is a dream of the night and darkness of the past. Let him be relegated to the museum of theological curiosities, mummies and skeletons that the coming ages will study to find out what men were thinking of long ago. End quote. Since for Dietrich, quote, all physical evil is maladjustment between man and his conditions, end quote, and, quote, increasing knowledge is slowly disarming these evils, end quote, it follows for him that, quote, security and happiness, end quote, are enjoyed, quote, in proportion to our knowledge of natural law and our adjustment to it, end quote. It would be difficult to support that contention. Since 1928, the increase of knowledge of natural conditions has greatly accelerated, but man's security and happiness have not. There is definitely no necessary correlation between knowledge of the natural world and security and happiness. Moreover, Dietrich's definition of moral evil is totally humanistic. Quote, moral evil is only moral or social maladjustment, a man's getting out of right relationship with his fellow men or with himself. End quote. Thus, since moral evil is social maladjustment and physical evil is, quote, maladjustment between man and his conditions, end quote, it follows that the good is adjustment. How do you adjust to an earthquake or tornado? You can prepare for it or build in terms of protection against it, but none of it makes an earthquake or tornado good. Similarly, if all of society or most of it is made up of immoral men, that is, liars, adulterers, thieves and murderers, is it good to adjust to that? Beckaboo. Is it good to adjust to it? In terms of Dietrich, adjustment or conformity is good. Since Dietrich's day, men, after working for adjustment and conformity, have decided that society itself is maladjusted, and hence to adjust to it is evil. The result has been rebellion and an insistence on the moral value of non-adjustment to society and an adjustment, both moral and physical, to nature. One result has been the ecology movement. Nature has become the norm for adjustment, but how can we assume that nature is normative? What is the criterion for assuming that anything is normative? Since knowledge disarms and abolishes evil, how can we know, short of an exhaustive knowledge of the Drinky poo. I got the drinky poo in my eye. Strong stuff. That's single malt water. A pause there. Oh boy. Oh, it's rough. Dookie dookie, that's better. Settle down now. Since knowledge disarms and abolishes evil, how can we know, short of an exhaustive knowledge of the universe, how to judge anything as normative? The humanist, by denying the reality of evil, has also denied the reality of the good. By denying hell, he has also denied heaven. If good and evil are simply relative to man's security, health and happiness, then they are really beyond definition, because there is no reason to assume that anything conducive to man's health is of necessity conducive to his security and happiness also. A man may be happier eating a coconut cream pie than a lettuce salad, but this does not make it conducive to his health. A man may also find more security in saving his short supply of money instead of taking a vacation, which may further his health and happiness. And to assume that spending the money makes for security because it makes for happiness is absurd. To make good and evil relative to man is to make man the ultimate standard or norm in the universe. Since man is obviously neither the creator nor governor of all things, to make good and evil relative to a created and relative fact is to falsify good and evil. Without a true definition of good and evil, there can be no possibility of salvation. For some, life itself is evil, and therefore death is good. It is deliverance and salvation. For Dietrich, biblical faith represents superstition and hence evil. Man's salvation requires deliverance from it. This is not all. A relative idea of good and evil means a relative idea of salvation, And in a world in which all things are relative, nothing has any validity. For some romantic poets, the supreme good and salvation from their distress meant the love of some woman. Very commonly, soon thereafter, salvation meant escape from the love of the same woman. Their grandiloquent world of good and evil had all the dignity of a bedroom farce. The Westminster Larger Catechism, question 24, defines sin thus: sin is any want of conformity unto or transgression of any law of God given as a rule to the reasonable creature. End quote. Because of man's fall, the world is also fallen, to prevent man in his sin from enjoying creation in its perfection. Thus, moral and physical evil are in origin personal. They come from man's rebellion against God and man's attempt to be his own God, determining good and evil for himself and in relation to his desires. Genesis 3:5. The penalty for sin, the moral evil, was death, the epitome of physical evil. Genesis 2:17. Man was led into sin by another creature, Satan. Of Satan, Hughes observed, quote, "Nothing could be more unscientific or unphilosophical than to doubt the existence of Satan, a personal spirit of evil. To talk about a, quote, principle of evil, end quote, is to talk meaningless rubbish and to use sounds absolutely devoid of sense. Principle of evil, indeed. Who ever heard of such a thing? Who can really imagine such a thing? All moral good and all moral evil of which we have any conception is always and must always be personal." End quote. In contradiction to Hughes, we can say that there is a principle of evil precisely because a personal God exists against whom men are in rebellion, and the principle, or essential character or essence, of evil is man's desire to be his own God, and this was Satan's desire also. In agreement with Hughes, we must deny that any Platonic or Manichaean principle of evil exists. It must then be stressed that the role of Satan must not be overemphasized. A serious and Manichaean error with regard to Satan assumes that he is omnipresent and is everywhere tempting all men into sin. Satan, however, is not God. He is a creature. His presence is a purely local one, just as I, if I am in California, cannot be in Virginia at the same time, nor know the mind of anyone in Virginia unless they choose to write to write or to telephone me, so Satan too has a purely local presence. Only God is omnipresent, and to ascribe omnipresence to Satan is to become a Satanist. Similarly, Satan lacks omniscience. He cannot know what is in my mind or the mind of any man except by analogy. He can assume that, because I am a creature, and although redeemed, still subject to some of the infirmities of the fall, I will share with him some common impulses and desires. With the unregenerate, he has full rapport by analogy. However, to know exactly what our unexpressed thoughts are is beyond him. By recognizing the local nature of Satan and all devils or fallen angels, we thereby recognize their limited power and influence. We are compelled to recognize the centrality of our own moral decision. It is a part of our sin to say that Satan led us astray when we ourselves willingly plunged into it, enticed by our own sinful nature. Very wisely, John Donne, in his poem The Litany, 17. Prayed that we might be delivered, quote, from tempting Satan to tempt us, end quote. In Holy Sonnets 15, Donne stated the case to God, quote, "Reason, your viceroy, and me should defend." What? Not quite sure what. "Reason, your viceroy, and me should defend, but is captived and proves weak or untrue. Yet dearly I love you, and would be loved fain, but am bethroned unto your enemy. Divorce me, untie or break that knot again. Take me to you, imprison me, for I, except you enthrall me, never shall be free, nor ever chaste except you ravish me." To overrate Satan means also to underrate God. It means ascribing a major share of God's power and sovereignty to Satan and thereby surrendering a part of reality to the devil. Many who do this end up by limiting salvation to the soul and surrendering the world to the devil. St. Paul in Romans 6:20-23 declared in St. Arthur St. Way's version, quote, Arthur S. Way's, St. Paul in Romans 6:20-23 declared in Arthur S. Way's version, "When you were thus thralls to sin, you were, in relation to righteousness, free men. It had no control over your life. I ask you then, what harvest did you reap in those days from actions at the memory of which you now blush? None, for the goal to which those things led was death. But now you have been emancipated from sin. You have become thralls to God. You are reaping a harvest of your own. Its ingathering shall be holiness. The goal shall be life, eternal life. Ah, the pittance wage that sin doled out to you was death, but the lavish bounty of God is life eternal, involved in your union with the Messiah, with Jesus our Lord. Ours." End quote. Sin, moral evil, results in physical or natural evil, the culmination of which is death. Death? What's that? What is death? Like DOS? Physical or the culmination of which is death. Salvation leads to sanctification, to holiness, to moral good or righteousness, which instead is productive of, quote, life, eternal life. It has results here and now, and it culminates in a life without either sin or death. When Oliver Wendell Holmes defined sin as comparable to disease, quote, "An occurrence absolutely necessary, inevitable, and, as one may say, normal labor." Normal under certain given conditions of constitution and circumstance, end quote, he was confident that he had abolished both the medicine man and the clergyman. He held that, quote, "Sin, like disease, is a vital process," end quote. In reality, he abolished progress from the liberal vocabulary. In time, it became apparent that a quote-unquote normal condition was not one which man could legitimately war against. Sin was thus domesticated and made man's normal condition in the 20th century. Okay, that was XXV1. The next chapter is XXV11. It may not be original, but it's functional. That was my first of the day. It was a little bit difficult getting out. Predictably, I'm getting a cup of tea now. I don't need it, but I want it. It's probably not good for me. I'm sorry, got this. But yeah, so hope you enjoyed that. That was mind-blowing as always. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in and hope to see you soon. See you around. Well done for listening right to the end. If you would like to know more about this important Christian audiobook project, please go to nathanteacher.com. Thanks.